Welcome to the Bleep Midlife Bulimia podcast with guest Dr. Debi Silber, founder of the Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute. Hi everyone, I am Lorianne. I'm the host of Bleep Midlife Bulimia. And today I am very honored to have Dr. Debi Silber with me. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of her incredible life, she is the founder of Post-Betrayal Transformation Institute and is a holistic psychologist, a health and mindset and personal development expert. She's also the #1 best-selling author of The Unshakable Woman, 4 Steps to Rebuilding Your Body, Mind, and Life After a Life Crisis. And her newest book is Trust Again, Overcoming Betrayal and Regaining Health, Confidence, and Happiness. And I'm so pleased to have you here today. Thank you for being with me.
Oh, looking forward to our conversation. Thanks so much.
So my first question will be, what inspired you to start the Institute?
Yeah, well, this is actually my 30th year in business. And as life would morph and change, so would business. And it was a horrible betrayal from my family. And I thought I did everything I needed to heal from that. And then a couple of years later, it was my husband. Anybody who's been through it, you're blindsided, you're devastated. Life will never be the same. So I got him out of the house and I was like, all right, that's it. Now it's my turn here. Because I looked at both experiences and I said, well, what's common to both of these? And I was never on my own to-do list. You know, it was all about everybody else. Boundaries were getting crossed, never took my needs seriously. So here I was 50 years old, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I was like, I'm going back for a PhD. I don't know where that even came from. I had no idea how I was going to do it, pay for it. And I was so determined, and it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was changing. I didn't quite understand it. He was too, on his own, wasn't ready to look at that. And then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. Well, that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my business, my health, my work, my life.
That's amazing. And give us a little bit of an idea. So like, I know that this is about bulimia, but I know that I was telling you that I had a betrayal and had been bulimic. It didn't help that. Like it almost even made it worse. I got further into it during that period of healing, which was not helping me heal.
Right.
So,
well, it's so hard to manage these emotions. I mean, think about it. This was the person, these were the people who gave us a sense of safety and security. So when this is the person, these are the people to shatter that sense of safety and security. It's terrifying, you know? And so betrayal is just listen, all crises, all traumas stink, right? So it's which is better or worse, but it's so, and that was actually one of the discoveries, which was that yes, it's also a trauma and a crisis, but it is different. And here's why. Let's say, you lose someone you love. Like I lost my mom. You grieve, you're sad, you mourn the lost. Life will never be the same. You don't necessarily take it personally. Betrayal feels so intentional. So you take it so personally. So rejection, abandonment, confidence, worthiness, belonging, trust, they're all shattered. So when you rebuild all of that, you're rebuilding the self. So it needed its own name, that type of healing. So there's a new term now that coined a term, post-betrayal transformation. That is the complete and total rebuild of your life and of yourself after betrayal.
and that is very much everything that you said is absolutely true. Now, I guess in a sense, it took a long time for me to get through it. I mean, I'm okay today. There's still some moments of the post-betrayal, but I would probably say it took me like 13 years before. So I would imagine in your institute and you helping out, that would be shortened, that time.
Well, and it's interesting. There are many ways that shorten it. And so much of it has to do with the tools you have available to you, the resources, the type of support, and your willingness. There are some people who they have their story and they're sticking with it and they are not letting it go for anything. And what I found that really moves the needle is, and this was about the second discovery, that while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal, we're going to move through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is now we know what happens physically, mentally, emotionally at every one of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. So, now we know there's a roadmap for this. And so if someone is willing to get on the road with this roadmap, they will predictably get from this place of post-betrayal syndrome, which we can talk about, all the way through the 5 stages to that place of post-betrayal transformation. So within the Institute, we have programs that literally walk people through the 5 stages. Our certified coaches are all trained in moving people through the 5 stages. So we get stuck sometimes, and it takes a lot longer because we have no idea those stages exist. I had no idea before it showed up in the research and in the data. And there is and I'm happy to go through the 5 stages if that would serve.
Absolutely.
And there is one stage where most people land and stay, and it's before transformation even begins. And it's so common. So yes, if you want me to go through the stages, I'm happy to.
Would love that.
Sure. So they're all mapped out in Trust Again, and this is what we teach within the PBT Institute, but here we go. Brief version of it. So stage 1 is like a setup stage, and I saw this with all of my study participants, me too. If you imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everyone was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, and kind of neglecting the emotional and the spiritual. So what does that look like? It looks like we're really good at thinking and doing and not paying much attention to the feeling and being. But that's where our intuition lies. And we turn that down. That's not saying if you're thinking and doing, it's a setup for betrayal. It's just what I saw every single time. Anyway, if a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over, and that's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest stage, shock. This is D-Day, Discovery Day. Here's where it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Here's where that person takes a mask off saying, this is who I've really been this whole time. And so the body takes a hit. We have ignited the stress response. We're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around the information you just learned. Makes no sense. And your worldview is shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. These are the rules. Trust this person. Don't go there. This is how life works. And in a moment, right, everything that you've known to be real and true is no longer. And a new worldview hasn't been constructed yet. So it's terrifying. But think about it. Here's where the bottom bottoms out on you. But if you were to walk down the street and the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything and everything you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical of all of the stages. How do I survive this experience? If you can't help me get out of my way, where do I live? How do I feed my kids? What do I do? But here's the trap. This is the most common stage to get stuck in because a few things start happening. The first is once you've figured out how to survive, you're like, okay, we got this. And because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you think it's good. You have no idea. There's a stage 4 and stage 5 waiting for you. Transformation doesn't even happen until stage 4 and stage 5. So you start planting some roots here. You're not supposed to, but you don't know that. So think about what happens here. You get these small self benefits. You get to be right. You get your story. You get someone to blame. You get a target for your anger. You get sympathy from everybody you tell your story to. You don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Do I trust you? Do I trust you? Forget it. I'm not trusting anybody. You plant deeper roots. Now the mind starts doing things because you're here a while. So the mind starts doing things like maybe you're not all that. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe you're not enough. Maybe you're not. All these things, right? Deeper roots. And now, because like energy attracts like energy, now you're calling situations and circumstances and people towards you to confirm this is where you belong. Deeper roots. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because this feels so bad, but you have no idea there's anything better, here's where you start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, reckless behavior, anything to numb, avoid, distract yourself from something so difficult to feel or face, right? Perfect place for bulimia right here. And you do this for a day, a week, a month, now it's a habit, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, that bulimia, that, that drinking, that numbing, that whatever, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would say, oh my gosh, that happened 20 years ago. Doesn't matter. They've put themselves in a perpetual holding pattern in stage 3. That makes sense?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And that's why that's the stage most people get stuck and stay. Anyway, if you're willing to let go of all those benefits you're getting, grieve, mourn the loss, you have to do a couple of things. You move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my betrayal, my experience, but I can control what I do with it and what I do with me. So here's where, if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. And when you're in this mental state, you're turning down the stress response. You're not physically healing just yet, but you've stopped causing the massive damage you were causing in stage 2 and stage 3. And what's so interesting to stage 4 is, think about it. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be when you enter into this new space. And what I found was, if your friends weren't there for you, here's where you don't take them with you. You've just outgrown them. And people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation and they're not a fit in the same way. When you're in this place, you're making it okay. You're making it home. Mentally, you can move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. You were surviving. Now you do. Your mind, you start making new rules, new boundaries based on what you've learned, based on your experience. And you have a new worldview based on everything you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, remember in the beginning, it was the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
That's fantastic. That is, and you're right, being stuck in that one. I was stuck there for a while, and then
most people get stuck there.
Yeah. And you really have to let go of that to move forward. You're absolutely right. And that takes time. And I mean, you were talking about support and friends, and you're right. And it was even my daughter who told me, she goes, Mom, they weren't there for you. You see them on Facebook, they're not contacting you. She says, Get them off Facebook. It's a bit like you said, but I've known them for this. Mom, it's not helping you. It's not serving you.
And that's the thing. And we think, is it us? Yes, it is, but in the best kind of way. We've outgrown them. We see things clearly, and we realize what we've been tolerating, or it was a one-sided relationship, or we were just giving and they were just taking. And that doesn't work. When we're recreating our lives and recreating our minds and recreating, betrayal lends itself to creating an entirely new identity. You take the parts you love, but you leave behind the parts that no longer serve. So that part, of us that maybe where boundaries were getting crossed, or that we didn't believe we were lovable, worthy, and deserving, whatever it is, you don't take that with you. You don't have to. When there's that complete and utter death and destruction of the old, we allow for the new. Within the Institute, we teach how to know if it's safe and in your best interest because rebuilding is always a choice, whether we rebuild ourselves and just move along. That's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or, if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So, not long ago, as 2 totally different people, we married each other again, new rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids is our bridal party. And I never in a bazillion years would have done anything like that if I wasn't completely different, for sure, if he wasn't completely different. And it's like a totally new family. It's like the same characters, but totally different.
Love that. Now, with this betrayal, I guess there's always the question about forgiveness. And I think that is one of the most difficult, parts of it, and people telling you forgive. And I think at the beginning, you're not really ready to.
Right.
But then at some point, there has to be a certain amount. But I guess I'll let you speak to it, because I basically tell people I've forgiven the parties involved, but it doesn't mean I want them at my table to eat with me.
100%. And here's the thing, forgiving, we've all heard forgiveness is for us. It's really not even for them. Reconciliation has so much to do with the other person. Forgiveness has what to do with us. I mean, that is really up to us. But what I've seen though is when, and I even remember reading a few studies where it was really about when you feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel better. When you do not feel safe and valued and you forgive, you feel worse. So I've seen this so many times. When we forgive too early, it backfires every time, because we're not forgiving for the right reasons. Of course it's for us. Having said that, when we're forgiving because it's just too painful to keep this up, because it would just be easier, because this way I can just put it behind me. No, you can't. You can't put it behind you until you heal. And when we're doing it for reasons like that, we're not ready. And it doesn't work nearly as effectively as when we have done the work, truly the work to heal. And forgiveness and trust are kind of along the same timeline. And it's like, why does it take so long to forgive? It's because trust takes a long time too. And people ask me all the time, can trust be repaired? I say no. Can it be rebuilt? It can, but it's a big process. And I look at trust like a brick wall. The only way I know of a brick wall being built is brick by brick by brick, right? Now imagine the person who built that wall now shatters the whole thing. Now you can look at the rubble of bricks and say, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt. If you're interested in that, the person whose trust was shattered, the person who's been betrayed, has to be willing to watch that brick wall be rebuilt. And the person who shattered the trust has to be a really good bricklayer. So, how is it going to go back up the second time? Brick by brick by brick, every opportunity they have to show that they're trustworthy. Well, that's a brick in the brick wall. So when it comes to forgiveness, right, what are we forgiving it on? Forgiving based on the pile of rubble? We may need to see a brick wall being rebuilt. I mean, but like I said, forgiveness really is about us. It's letting go of the power that pain has over us. But yeah, it's and it's also a very different thing. Like I forgave my family, right? But you're right, like what you said, I don't have to sit at a table with them. Forgiving and rebuilding, whew, that was a whole other thing. And I have to tell you, I'll be totally honest, my ego had a really hard time with that one.
Yes.
That your ego takes it. You are slaying every dragon and facing every fear. And because I live with just, I don't know, my level of integrity is everything to me. And I live by a very simple rule. If it's going to hurt someone, don't do it, period, end of story. And I can honestly say, I can look at you saying, since I have been on this planet, I have never once intentionally hurt a human being. Intentionally. So something like betrayal, there was not one cell of me that was even remotely okay with any of it.
Yep.
So I talk about wrestling with your own ego and here's your ego on one side and here's your soul on the other, saying, who's in it, a battle, an absolute battle. And I was like, well, okay, if I can heal from this, I'm taking everybody with me, because this is by far, I've lost loved ones. I've been in the ICU for 11 days. Like, I know trauma, but nothing got me like this.
And you're right, the ego. I mean, I am sure people can understand that too. I was concerned that I would continually be like, let's say, so when I was buried and it happened the first time, I had a hard time. If I got angry at him, that would resurface. That betrayal would resurface for something I was angry about that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And to overcome that's very difficult.
Yeah, because think about it. This is such a deep wound. It's so personal, but it's not. And this is the thing. If you have to say it 100 million times, it's worth it. Even though it happened to you, it's not about you. But we never realized that in the beginning. This was someone else's lack. This was someone else's hole. This was someone else's void that they didn't know how to fill. They didn't know what to do with it. And it's, what happens is what used to work doesn't work anymore. What used to make sense doesn't make sense anymore. What used to make us feel good doesn't make us feel good anymore. And we think we like change. No, we don't. So what happens is, this is why we numb, avoid, and distract. But if you notice, the voice gets louder and louder, so the stakes get bigger and bigger. And what we really need to do is listen to that voice and say, what is it that I really need? Because when you feed that, that's a healthier way to go, instead of just trying to outrun it through, any other external vice, because that's all it is. But we take it personally because that external vice is a person versus a drug, or a TV show numbing in front of whatever. But that's what it is. And, there are so many reasons why people betray. What I've also found is it shows us who someone really is or who they've temporarily become. And that is the biggest shock in the world for the betrayer and for the betrayed and for the betrayer, because it gives both an opportunity to say, what the heck? What did I just do? And like in my case, my husband was the one who told my kids. And if anything is going to have you fall from grace and wake up and realize what matters, it's realizing you just lost everything that matters.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was gigantic, for him. And so I had my own shock and trauma and things I was dealing with. And then on his own, so did he, and he had to, he didn't have to, but if he wanted to have anything to do with our family, he really had to earn back the trust and then respect of everyone. And he took the time. I mean, he definitely did. He even called on my friends and apologized.
Oh, wow.
For who he'd been. Yeah. And what he had done to their friend. Yeah. This is someone who owned it completely.
I think that's fabulous. And that there's a big side to that too, because I do know a family where, it occurred and the person owned it. And it's easier to forgive somebody when they do that than if they deny it or they hide it or they don't say anything. And
well, there's nothing to work with then,
no.
if that's the case. And it's interesting because there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And there was one group in particular, this was the group where the betrayer had no consequences, very little consequences. And this was either out of religious reasons, this was a big one, financial fear, fear in general, not wanting to break up a family, whatever it was. And here's where they just tried to put it behind them. They just did their best just to, it's like, la, 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 make it go away. And I only saw 2 things with this group: a further deterioration of the relationship. And the second thing was, this group was by far the most physically sick. Your broken heart can't handle that. And so it was like, in my case, here it was, I was like, okay, that was the deal breaker. I'm on my own now, single mom, here I go, having no idea what was going to show up. And it was terrifying. But that's the piece that a lot of people aren't willing to do. But it's only in that piece, death of the old, does a new get to emerge. But instead, we're trying to patch it up, patch. It's like, you ever see those houses where they just kind of patch, level it. It's been leveled. And now build something magnificent. You can. At the very least, a magnificent you.
That's important.
That's the most important. Because you now have an opportunity to, like I said, with this new identity, who do you want to be? What's important to you? What have you been compromising that you're no longer willing to? And there is such a link between betrayal and self-betrayal, where we just betray ourselves. We put up with stuff we never would if we felt better. We never would if we worked on these different skills. So here's the most beautiful opportunity to really work on you. And when you do, at the very least, you're going to be this strong, whole, healed, healthy version of you. And anyway, even if it were to rebuild something entirely different with the same person or someone new, you're coming at it from such a different space. And it's just so much better. It's like, you're not playing in the kiddie pool anymore. You've outgrown it.
You're right too. I know that my ex-husband, when I basically said I wanted to leave, he wanted me to stay for the kids. I'm thinking, it really was, I mean, it might have been repairable, but at this point I'd had it. But my children afterwards said, Mom, we're so much happier that you and dad, you know, divorced, because you're both
Yeah.
happier now.
Yeah, that's it. And
Yeah.
we think we're protecting the kids. I mean, listen, I respect every parent's idea of how they want to do this. In my, in my situation, the only thing I can see is I feel like kids are so smart. They feel they know what's going on.
Yes.
And so, it was this balance between I'm going to be real, but I'm not going to burden them. So they're going to see real, but they're going to see, listen, mom's struggling now, but they're also going to see me rise. And won't that give them a set of coping skills, seeing, wow, mom's been hit hard, but I've watched her move through this, and she's okay, instead of them being like, wow, mom's acting weird. What's up? I mean, I just think they're smarter than that. Or making it like nothing is ever wrong.
Yeah.
Then how does anybody learn how to cope? I don't know. Just my own philosophy.
Yeah. I don't think you can fake something really. The kids, like you said, they're intuitive. And you're right about that too, because my daughter, she's 27 now, but 2 years ago, she said, Mom, because I've got two really good role models in my life. I mean, her father, of course, took it a lot better than I did.
Mm.
But she says, but in your case, she says, I saw you go down to the bottom of the pit and come back up again. And she
Yeah,
goes, and so that strength is what she saw as a good role model to say, you can build yourself back up again.
exactly.
So
I just think that's so powerful because, and I see it with all four of my kids. They're so different, but they've seen the downside, and so they have this perspective, and they have this ability to now, when they go through, of course we want to protect our kids from everything, right? But they're going to go through stuff, but at least they know, wow, okay, I've seen an example of what hardship looks like. I've seen what pain looks like. I'll be okay. I'll be okay.
that's important, because I remember, as I was growing up, it was like, Disney, and, get a great a university degree and you'll come out and you'll have a great job and all this. And I remember this radio personality I had in one of my shows, and he said the worst thing that parents can do is tell their kids that life is fair. They have to teach them that life is not fair. And he says, I know it sounds bad, but if you put them out there thinking life is fair, they're going to crumble worse than if you tell them the truth.
Yeah. And think about it, anybody who's done anything powerful, it's not because it's been easy. There's the hero's journey in there somewhere. They were strolling along and then trauma came by and they crashed, and it was without any indication of what was going to show up. They just were determined to move through it, and they did, and they rose. And then from there, they teach what they learned. I think we're kind of obligated to do that. So all I did was do something good with something bad. And now, we're so grateful we're helping so many people with it. So
I love that. And so I just wanted to ask if you can tell our listeners where they can find you. And I just want to say to my listeners, I saw Dr. Silber on her TEDx talk, and it was just astounding and beautiful. A friend of mine sent it to me, and so that's why I'm really honored to have her here, because a year and a half later, here she is on my show. Awesome. So if you can let them know how to get a hold of you, please.
Sure, thank you. And I did too. So one is stop sabotaging yourself. And believe it or not, I did that one 6 weeks after my betrayal. I can't even watch that one because I know the pain I was experiencing, and I see it on my face. That was 6 weeks after. And then the most recent was the one, do you have post-betrayal syndrome? So what I would love everybody to do is take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. And that was the third discovery. There's this collection of symptoms so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we've taken, we've had, 25,000 people take the quiz. And what we're finding is just astounding. And we also know, we've heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. So they could find the post-betrayal syndrome quiz at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com/quiz.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I again appreciate you being here. And this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.